there's been a consistent flow of production for 100 years. Think about that for a second. We're an outlier. Utah's an outlier, you know. We're not Hollywood. We're not New York. We're Utah, you know. And to say that the industry has been working here for 100 years is pretty special. My name is Marshall Moore.
Virginia Pierce.
Mariah Mellis, and I'm with the Utah Film Center.
I'm the Vice President of Operations and Marketing for Utah Film Studios in Park City.
I'm the Director of the Utah Film Commission.
And my current title is Executive Director of the Utah Film Center. Along with working for the Utah Film Center, I actually belong to an organization called the Motion Picture Association of Utah. Anyone in the state can belong to the association. It's a small due that's paid, and that money goes toward lobbying efforts to increase the film incentive.
An incentive, essentially, film production spend a certain amount of money in a state, and the state will give them a portion of that funding back. And every state differs a little bit. Utah started with a few little, ways into that market in the early 2000s, and then in 2011, they passed a bill that created the program that we have now, which is an ongoing $6.79 million in tax credit.
This year, for the first time in 10 years, there was a change to the program, a much needed change, which will help keep productions here for longer periods of time. So added to the $6.79 million that's the base incentive is now an additional $12 million per fiscal year if you shoot 75% of your production days in a rural county.
So how that works is, again, film production will come to us, find out if it's a good fit creatively, and then they will apply for the incentive before they begin production and let us know what they think they'll spend here, where they're going to shoot, how many Utah crew they're planning on hiring. And based on all of those things, along with the script, is kind of the criteria that we base the incentive on. It's not a first come, first serve program. We use a lot of different varieties to discern whether one project is going to be a better fit than the other, but it's pretty firmly based in economic impact. We love to see projects shoot off the Wasatch Front. We're trying to spread the love in rural Utah, so it gets an extra bonus if you're shooting in rural Utah. And so if they are approved for the incentive, then after they've shot, they come back to us with an audit of everything they've spent in Utah and will receive a tax credit. So they will file their taxes with the tax commission, and that's how they get their credit.
So, it's not like here's, $1 million, go make your movie. It's like make your movie and then show us what you've done and the 75% that's been shot here, and then we'll give you a little coupon and say thanks for playing.
Show us your receipts.
Show us your receipts. My name is Biga Metzner, and I am the film commissioner for the Moab to Monument Valley Film Commission, which is most recently for Grand County in the Economic Development Department.
And my name is Brian Hunnings. I'm the general manager here at the iconic and world-renowned Red Cliffs Lodge here in Moab, Utah.
I'm a liaison between film productions and this area that I represent, and I, do whatever I can to inspire productions to come here, to help them to find local crew to hire, to help them find the correct locations for them, and then pass that on to other location experts who can do more of the stuff, to show them the permitting agents that they need to use between the BLM, the National Park and State Park and SITLA and sovereign land, like everything that exists in permit land. I'm the film commissioner for the longest running film commission in the world, and so filming has been going on here, and there was mining, and then that went away-ish, and then filming happened and sort of bridged the gap between,
for decades.
For many, many decades,
yeah.
And then it slowed down, and then tourism picked up, and people have been coming here because they've seen it in movies or commercials for years. People do come to this area mostly to shoot practical locations, being in the environment that they want to shoot in, not doing it on green screen, not doing it on the volumes or whatever,
And then you get here and you see that, 220 films, thousands of commercials, TVs have been filmed here. And when you're here and you're actually in it and bathing in it, you understand why, because you can feel it. You can feel that energy.
Not every production is that way. Some need to be in the city, and they can still use the other part of the incentive for that. But this addendum, is like, okay, there's like at least, I think there's like 25 rural counties in the state, and that gives them a lot of opportunities to look for locations. So a lot of the shows that come to this studio are looking for wilderness, are looking for small towns, mountains, streams, lakes, houses on farms, So that's really helpful when they have that going, and now they can get an incentive on it and still dip into, other areas of the state that aren't rural. But if they're doing 75% of their days, then they can qualify for that incentive. And there's never been, more money available than there is right now. I think the general public has a tendency to say, oh, that's nice, or not even care where it was made. They just want to see a good movie. But when they find out it's made here, a lot of people, they take pride in that. They take pride in the fact that High School Musical was done here, or The Sandlot was shot in Salt Lake City, or Independence Day was shot out on the Salt Flats, Pirates of the Caribbean. Once they know that, they're like, hey, that's great. What they don't think is the next layer beyond the obvious fact that it was filmed here, that it created jobs, that people rented equipment and hotels. They used our vendors for food, and that they hired a lot of locals to support those productions when they came here. Jobs, good paying, high quality jobs were being created every time a film sets foot in the state of Utah.
A film production will come into a county, they stay in motels, they're using the catering, they're hiring local. It really does, you see kind of an immediate infusion of resources and funding to a community where they need it the most.
Even with the tax incentive, when a crew comes to film anywhere, particularly in the state, it's proven that for every dollar they spend, they bring back $7 in revenue, taxable revenue. It's huge. So, it's so important from an economic standpoint.
You can read the research study that talks about the impact film makes in communities and how it translates from everything to hotel rooms and restaurants, people working in the community, building roads. The implications of the incentive is so vast, and we're still just starting to collect that data, but that will be a big push over the next 2 years to really tell the story of how film has impacted these rural communities. The Utah Film Center, in its name, wants to be beyond Salt Lake City and beyond the Wasatch Front. And so as the Utah Film Center, we travel around with our media education in all communities around the state, visiting every school district once every 7 years to make sure that anyone interested in film knows about the resources that are available in the state. As we travel through these communities, many kids are inspired by film. As you can imagine, it's an amazing art form to work in. It's also a very compelling way to connect with people and ideas, really to highlight our humanity. And as we move throughout the state and share our love of film, it is challenging when there are not enough jobs in these areas. So the Rural Film Incentive will really help these students who grow up with a love of film and are educated in film to remain in the state and continue working. The expansion of the film incentive in rural communities will allow somebody in Roosevelt or Price or Moab to continue to contribute to their community while also doing something that they love.
I think the same reason why people want to do business here and come visit here and live here is the same reason why people want to film here. It's easy to get around, it's film friendly, and people are still excited to see movie crews in their neighborhood, and I think all that combined really makes for a good place for everyone to base their production. What also is cool about the crews in Utah, and I've heard this from outside producers, is because we started smaller and we're definitely still an ancillary market, but so everyone sometimes has to jump in and do different roles. So you may have had experience in camera and had experience in sound, and you've done transportation and you've done locations, so it's a little more fluid of a set, And even when you get into a bigger production and you have one specific job, you have a knowledge of the other sides of the production that is very, very helpful. And I've heard producers like, wow, their Utah crew really know what they're doing. I mean, beyond, it's beyond the, this is my job and this is all I do. And so I think that's a great asset for us as well.
One of the things that appealed to me was the community of film professionals that were here. I had come from Los Angeles, which was a much larger community. I rarely worked with the same people, more than a couple of times over 10 years. It was always a new group of people that I was working with. When I came to work here, I noticed this was a tight-knit film community that supported each other. And they knew what they were doing, too. That was the amazing part about it. A lot of these film crew workers, some of them had their roots just in Utah, and others were like me, who had come out of Los Angeles to work here on shows and ended up staying because they liked the lifestyle here. I moved to Utah in 1994, but I had started working here a couple of months before that. I was hired in Los Angeles to be the Utah location manager on an ABC miniseries called The Stand, based on the novel by Stephen King. And during the course of that, I worked here for 8 months. During the course of that, I realized there was a thriving film industry here in Utah. There was a lot of people that worked in the industry. There was a lot of production coming and going. The Sandlot had just been filmed here the year before. There was movies of the week coming, feature films like Dumb and Dumber. And the thought crossed my mind that maybe I don't have to live in Los Angeles to still resume and work in my career. So that was one of the things. It was the crew, it was the ease of getting around and finding locations that all appealed to me, and why I wanted to make this home and why it's so great. Now, when I worked at the Film Commission, a lot of students had the desire, because I give presentations at the schools and the classes, and I'll ask them, I'll say, do you want to stay in Utah and work? And about 90% of them raise their hand and say, yeah, I want to stay here. And then they want to know, is it possible for me to stay here and work? Or do I need to go to LA? It's not impossible. You can do it. But here, there's opportunities, and once you grab a hold of a certain group of people who believe in you, then you're kind of in, Like I said, I never had to leave Utah for work.
My name is Roland LaFont. I bought this place in 2000. Harry Goulding was a sheep buyer, and he bought for the whole area of Utah. And at that time, the movies were starting, the cowboys and the Indians and all that. So he decided that he would take a bunch of nice pictures. And he took them to John Ford in Hollywood. He walked in, and John Ford said, I don't want to talk to those guys. They were determined, so they just camped out in his office for 3 days. And after the third day, he finally came out. And he looked at all those pictures and everything else. And he jumped in his little wagon. It took him 3 days to get out here. And that was the start of the Western movies in Monument Valley. The first movie that was ever shot here was Stagecoach, and that was 1939.
Well, I'll start with John Ford. He came out here with John Wayne, and I think immediately John Wayne kind of fell in love with the area, and he filmed 6 of his biggest blockbusters here in the Moab area.
Great ideas seem to float to the surface in this community. And so filmmaking, with its long history in Utah, from the early days in Kanab and it's the spaghetti westerns and the Perrys, really recruiting filmmakers here, there's just a the history and the energy combined with the resources that this state has.
I love the history of film in Utah, and it's been almost 100 years since we got into the world of filmmaking. It really came through John Ford's interest in Westerns and wanting to film off of a studio lot, which was kind of unheard of at the time. People were just basing their films in a warehouse and, making the best of it. And he wanted reality. So he came looking for the classic Western landscape and found it in southern Utah. And just to watch the history of that unfold and how people are, constantly looking for inspiration. And I think we're still seeing filmmakers come that are inspired by Utah's landscapes.
So many people do not believe that this is real.
Yep.
That this, where we are, is real. They watch these movies, they see these trailers, they see car commercials, and they go, you mean that's real? I mean, I've literally had people from foreign countries and or elsewhere be like, it's not green screen, it's not painted in, it's not the Wile E. Coyote, even though it looks like, that's cartoon stuff. It's real.
Hey, mister, see that sister? Don't you let that thrill you? Sticks and stones may break your bones, but when it looks good, kill you. Ho, ho, hey, come my way, suka, suka, na, na. Come on, sale, ale, with the suka, suka, mama. Hey, brother, there's another suka, mama turning. The sun will rise and light in your eyes, fire keeps on burning. Ho, ho, hey.
My name is Devin Ecker. I am a filmmaker. First I started just PAing, gripping, camera AC, little jobs here and there, and then eventually worked my way up to a position at Sundance, and I just kind of got gobbled up in the film world. I recommend, you're not going to be a director, producer right out of the gate. You're just not. You got to go grip and PA, get to know the market, get to know the people, get to know the world, see who you get along with, because there's enough in that producing, directing, director of photography world, gaffing world, that if you wanted to see what one group is like versus another group, you could bounce around very easily as a grip or PA.
Show them that you can be anything. Yes, you can start out as a production assistant, but you could be a writer, a director, a grip, an electric, a camera person, a wardrobe. There's so many pieces to the puzzle, and it is so collaborative. And I think that's the thing that not everyone knows, that it really is. I mean, it takes all of these people to come together to make something, whether it's this big or it's massive. It's like coming together to make magic.
I think there's a lot of ways into the film industry, and a lot of people who are directing now got their start as crew. And I think that's such a great way to see how a film goes together. So I always say, take advantage of what's in front of you. If you have the opportunity to be a production assistant on a set, take it, because even if your goal is to be a writer and director, you're observing a film production happen and can really learn a lot from how you might put a film together differently in the future. So, I'm always my big thing is just say yes to everything and really learn where you can.
I think you can't wait around and expect to be called. It does happen, but you have to be active in your desire to want to do this, because if you're not active, the next person will be, and they might take the job you were meant for, So I think you have to do whatever you can to get yourself out there. And if that means in the beginning you are working as an intern, and I wouldn't recommend it for too long, but I at least say one time you should, if that's the way you get your foot in the door to start meeting industry professionals, that's what you should do.
If you want to be a specific position, okay, you can do that. You can direct. But you're not going to work right away. You have to put time into going and seeing how others direct, going and working for them as an assistant director, being there at acting workshops, seeing how actors interact. Like, you have to put the time into that, but you also have to put the time into the community, because that's also how you're going to feed yourself at the end of the day. You got to go PA. You got to go and work the jobs for everyone else, so that, you know, when you have the time to explain to them your vision, they're willing and ready to work for you and to do that.
When you see young, emerging, potential film crew members right in front of you that want to do it, and I'll ask them heart to heart, I'll say, is this what you want to do? Is this what your heart is telling you? Because it's hard. I tell them it's hard. It's long hours. You know, and like, I'll say, how many of you want to produce? All these hands go up. How many of you want to direct? All these hands go up. How many of you want to be a crew member? 2 or 3 hands go up, you know. But then those are the ones I cater my remarks to, at least, because they're the heart and soul of the industry. Who wants to be a grip? Who wants to be an electric? Who wants to run camera? Who wants to run sound? You know, that's the blood and the life of the film industry, is that film crew. And that's what producers look for when they come to Utah, is they're looking for qualified crew members. And you can have a long career in the film industry here doing that if you're good at it.
I just think that for anyone who wants to break ground on something and go for it, there's the opportunity here, but it's going to come with a lot of hard work and grit, and hopefully attracting some people who believe in your vision. And usually that takes investing a lot of time into theirs. So as long as you're prepared for that, I think a lot of people will be fine getting out there.
Is this what you really want to do, or is it just your hobby? You know, do you really want to make movies? Do you really want to work 12 to 14 hours a day on a crew, sometimes at night, sometimes in freezing temperatures? Are you willing to do that? And then it weeds itself out eventually. Those who love it and want to do it, nothing will stop them from doing it.
There's the opportunity, for sure. It's absolutely there. Media will always grow. And if we learned anything from the last recession, you know, people didn't pay for their mortgage. They let their houses get repossessed and their cars, you know, because they had to walk away from those problems, but they never stopped going to see movies. They always came because they need that escape.
There's something about making a film with people. They say how many hours you spend with somebody really allows you to bond, right? And nothing like 18-hour days behind, you know, a camera or on a set will make you bond with a group of people. The same thing can kind of be said for seeing films together. When you watch a film in an audience, in person, and you collectively share that shocking moment or that tearful moment, those shared experiences bring us closer together. So whether behind the scenes, behind the camera, or in an audience, film is something that connects us in ways that no other art form does. It transports us to a place and a time, and we share that moment together. And so I encourage people to not be isolated in filmmaking, not be isolated in watching a movie either. Really enjoy it with your community, share your experiences with it, and bring everyone you know and love onto set with you, into the team with you, and into the theater with you.